Well, Tom Burke is an environmentalist and chairperson of E3G, Third Generation Environmentalism, and joins us now from here in London via Skype. And Tom, I'm interested to know what goes through your mind. We've just been looking at images of destruction, devastation, pretty much everywhere, from the US to Europe to parts of Asia. I mean, we've seen people losing their lives in India and China, and many more people are missing. And then there's also the loss of livelihood. How much more volatile or even deadly could these conditions become?
A lot is the short answer. We are now experiencing the effects of a rise in global average temperatures of about 1.2 degrees. If we don't stop burning fossil fuels, then by the middle of the century, we will be living in a world that's well over 2 degrees. And if we continue to burn fossil fuels beyond that point, the world will go on getting hotter. And the kind of phenomena we're seeing now, unprecedented, but not completely unexpected phenomena that are going on all over the world, will just become more and more intense, and the disruption to people's lives, daily lives, will get more and more acute. More of the pictures you've just been showing.
Why do you say not unexpected?
Because we've been hearing exactly what might happen from the climate scientists for at least the last 35, 40 years. What we are seeing now is what they told us 30 years ago would happen if we didn't take urgent action to keep greenhouse gases out of the atmosphere. And exactly as they've forecast, we're seeing the rise in temperature. But what's even more alarming is the temperature is pretty much exactly rising as they've suggested it would, and their models say it would, but the impacts of that on our lives are much greater, more dramatic than they originally anticipated. So these effects are going to get more unprecedented, but they're certainly not something we didn't know was coming.
And are we prepared for that and for the consequences of this unprecedented extreme weather that is likely to get worse in years from now?
No, we're not. And we're not investing enough in two things. The most urgent priority is to invest in decarbonizing our energy system so that we don't go on making the problem worse. But climate change is happening now. It's not something for the future. And so we also have to invest in upgrading our infrastructure everywhere so that we can cope with the impacts we're already experiencing. And that means investing more, for instance, in managing dry lands and forest lands that are going to become more vulnerable to fires. It means investing more in the water system so that people can retain access to water, both in our cities, but also in our agriculture areas, or we won't be able to grow food. So we have to do an enormous amount to increase the resilience we have to these increasingly shocking events, at the same time as we have to invest in stopping burning fossil fuels.
I mean, we've seen these flood waters causing such havoc in Germany, and then these deadly mudslides in India, and then also we see droughts and wildfires playing out elsewhere in the US and Australia and now in Turkey. Can you explain how rising temperatures feed through into such different conditions depending on where you are in the world, whether it be very dry conditions in one place or heavier rainfall elsewhere?
I can't explain very shortly, but I can say, because it's a very complex system, that we're perturbing by adding greenhouse gases to the atmosphere. But what the scientists told us 30 years ago was it was likely that if we went on doing that, we would make wet areas wetter and dry areas drier. That was been a very brief summary of some very complicated science. But that's essentially what we're seeing. As the air warms up, as the sea warms up, we're seeing changes in the way weather is constructed. As ice melts, it changes the way in which temperatures are distributed around the world, and that's what drives our weather. The differences in temperature between the equator and the pole, for instance, is a very important driver of our weather. If you change that temperature balance, you change the distribution of things like floods and droughts, fires, heat, all of the things we're seeing right now.
Has this resulted in enough of a shift in language, maybe political culture and sort of mindset and mentality? Basically, is there a widespread acceptance that these conditions are being caused or at least exacerbated by human-induced climate change?
Yes, there is. And it's certainly true amongst populations wherever you take in the world. You take an opinion poll, you find the public is alert to and aware of the problem and want something done about it. Politicians have been slower. But what we've begun to see recently is pretty well across the board. Politicians are beginning to sign up to a commitment to get the world's energy system to net zero by 2050. But signing up or making a promise is something politicians are very good at doing. Doing the things that actually make a difference, they're rather less good at doing. And we're not seeing the kind of action from politicians that we need to see if we're going to address these problems successfully.
Thank you very much, Tom. Hope we get to chat again soon. Tom Burke joining us there from E3G.